Welcome back to episode 3 of the Humanoid Qualifiers here in the Monster Cup. We'll take a quick look at the bracket to recap where we are. Today we are going to be taking a look at winners round 2 as the Cultic Fanatic takes on the Berserker, the Archmage takes on a Gladiator, the Priest Acolyte takes on a Mage, the Spy takes on a Guard Captain, the Cultist takes on a Pyro Captain, and the Vampire Familiar takes on the Tough Boss. Let's jump straight into the action. We jump straight into our first battle as the Berserker takes on the Cultist Fanatic. We'll start by rolling initiative. The Berserker gets a 21, the Cultist gets a 9. We start with the Berserker. It's going to go ahead and use the movement to close the gap to the Cultist, and it is going to attempt a Great Axe attack against the Cultist. That's a 12 to hit. It will not hit. We move over to the Cultist. The Cultist will start by using a bonus action to cast Spiritual Weapon. The Spiritual Weapon is then going to attempt an attack against the Berserker. That is a 15 to hit. It does a d8 plus 2 for 10 damage to the Berserker. But we are not done there. The Cultist is going to go ahead and use a Pact Blade attack against the Berserker. That is a 8 to hit. It does not hit. We move over to the Berserker. The Berserker going to try a Great Axe attack. That is a 12 to hit. It does not hit. We move over to the Cultist. Once again, going to try and use Hold Person against the Berserker, making the Berserker do a Wisdom 12 saving throw. That is an 8 to save. It does not save. It is going to be paralyzed. The Cultist is then going to use its Spiritual Weapon, which now gets advantage to hit. It will get a 15 to hit, which will hit, and it will deal critical damage for 10 damage to the Berserker. We move over to the Berserker, which will miss its turn, but try to break free of its paralysis with another Wisdom saving throw, but it gets a natural 1. It does not succeed. The Cultist is then going to do a Pact Blade attack, which once again gets advantage. That is still only a 12 to hit. It does not hit, but it will use the Spiritual Weapon. Once again, with advantage, gets a 16 to hit. That will hit, dealing critical damage for a total of 11 damage to the Berserker. We move back to the Berserker. Once again, going to try and break free. It gets an 18 on its Wisdom saving throw. It does save, however, it missed its turn as we move back to the Cultist. The Cultist is going to try and cast Command against the Berserker, making it do a Wisdom saving throw yet again. It does not succeed, and it will be told to halt. The Cultist is then going to go ahead and attack with the Spiritual Weapon, no longer with advantage. It's a 13 to hit. It will hit, and it is going to deal 10 damage to the Berserker. We move back to the Berserker. Following its halt command will miss its turn. We move back to the Cultist, which is once again going to try using command, forcing the Berserker to make yet another Wisdom saving throw. This time it gets a 3. It does not save as it is once again told to halt. We will then use our Spiritual Weapon, which is a 7 to hit. It does not hit. The Berserker, yet again following its halt command, will miss its turn. We move back to the Cultist. This time going to do a Pact Blade attack. That is an 18 to hit. It will hit, dealing 4 plus 3 damage for 7 damage to the Berserker. It will then use its Spiritual Weapon, which is a 14 to hit. It will hit, dealing a total of 4 damage to the Berserker. The Berserker, finally able to respond with an attack, will get advantage because it is bloodied. It will get a 21 to hit. It will hit, dealing 10 damage to the Cultist. The Cultist then additionally needs to make a Constitution saving throw of DC 10 to save its concentration, and it does do that. We move on to the Pact Blade. Once again, an 8 to hit. It does not hit. It will then try its Spiritual Weapon, which is a 15 to hit. That will hit, dealing 3 damage to the Berserker. We move back to the Berserker. Once again, with advantage, is going to try a Great Axe attack. That is a 20 to hit. It will hit, and it is going to deal 8 damage to the Cultist. We move back to the Cultist. Once again, trying a Pact Blade attack. That is a 15 to hit. That will hit, dealing 5 plus 10 for 15 damage to the Berserker, and that is a dead Berserker. We move on to our second battle of the day as the Archmage takes on the Gladiator. We start by rolling initiative. The Mage gets a 26, the Gladiator gets a 6. We'll start with the Mage. It's going to go ahead and do 4 Arcane Blast attacks. The first is a 12 to hit. It does not hit. The second is a 16 to hit, which does hit. The third is a 22, which hits. And the fourth is a 21. 3 attacks hit. It will deal 33 plus 26 plus 36 damage to the Gladiator. The Gladiator, after taking this absolute walloping from the Archmage, is going to go ahead and close the gap. The Gladiator is then going to attempt a Shield Bash attack. The Mage will need to make a Strength saving throw of 15 or higher. It does not succeed, which means it is going to take 10 damage from the Shield Blast. However, the Gladiator is then going to attempt 2 spear attacks with advantage because the Mage is now prone. That will be a 24 to hit. It will hit, dealing 9 damage. And the second will be a 16 to hit, which does not hit. It will only take 9 damage. We now move back to the Archmage. It's going to go ahead and use a bonus action to Misty Step away from the Gladiator. It is then going to go ahead and do its 4 Arcane Blasts again. The first is a 10 to hit, which does not hit. The second is a 23 to hit, which will hit. It's going to deal 27 damage to the Gladiator, and that is a dead Gladiator. We move on to our third battle, where the Mage takes on a Priest Acolyte. We start by rolling initiative. The Mage gets a 22, the Priest gets a 12. We'll start with the Mage, which is just going to go ahead and do 3 Arcane Blast attacks. The first is a 19 to hit, that will hit. It is going to deal 16 damage to the Priest Acolyte, and that is a dead Priest Acolyte. We now move on to our fourth battle, where the Guard Captain takes on a Spy. We start by rolling initiative. The Guard Captain gets a 23, the Spy gets a 7. The Guard Captain is going to go ahead and move towards the Spy. It is then going to attempt 2 longsword attacks. The first is a 23 to hit, which will hit. The second is a 20 to hit, which will hit. It is going to deal 12 plus 8 damage for 20 damage to the Spy. We then move on to the Spy. The Spy is going to go ahead and use its bonus action to disengage. It is then going to go ahead and move 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 feet away from the Guard Captain, allowing it to go ahead and do a hand crossbow attack against the Guard Captain. That will be a 9 to hit. It does not hit. We move back to the Guard Captain, once again going to chase down the Spy, and it is then going to attempt 2 longsword attacks yet again. That is a 20 to hit. It will hit. It is going to deal 9 damage to the Spy, and that is a dead Spy. We now move on to the Cultist versus the Pirate Captain. We start with initiative. The Cultist gets a 5. The Pirate Captain gets a 14. We'll start with the Pirate, which is going to go ahead and shoot its pistol at the Cultist. But first, it will take 5 feet forward to get in the 30-foot range. It is then going to do its pistol attack. That is a 26 to hit. That will hit, dealing 16 damage. And that is a dead Cultist. We move on to our final battle of the night as the tough boss takes on the Vampire Familiar. We start with initiative. They both get a 15, but the Vampire has higher dexterity, so we'll start with it. It's going to go ahead and close the gap to the tough boss, and it will do 2 Umbral Dagger attacks. The first is an 11 to hit, which does not hit. The second is a 9 to hit, which does not hit. We move over to the tough boss. The tough boss is going to do 2 Warhammer attacks against the Vampire. The first is a 17 to hit, which will hit, dealing 11 damage. The second is a 20 to hit, which will hit, and it will deal 9 damage for a total of 20 damage to the Vampire. We move back to the Vampire, once again trying 2 Umbral Dagger attacks. The first is a 24 to hit. It does hit. It's going to deal 4 damage plus 5 damage for 9 damage to the tough boss. It is then going to do its second Umbral Dagger attack. This time, it is a 21 to hit, which does hit. It is going to deal 7 damage, plus an additional 6 damage for 13 damage to the tough boss. We move back to the boss. The boss is going to go ahead and do 2 Warhammer attacks. The first is an 8 to hit, which does not hit. The second is a 24 to hit, which does hit. It is going to deal 13 damage to the Vampire. The Vampire has taken a beating, but is still going strong. It's going to do 2 Umbral Dagger attacks. The first is a 15 to hit, which does not hit. The second is a 13 to hit, which does not hit. We move back to the tough boss. The tough boss doing a Warhammer attack. That is an 8 to hit, which does not hit. The second is a 25. It's a natural 20. It will deal critical damage for 11 plus 12 damage for 23 damage to the Vampire. We move back to the Vampire, once again going to be doing 2 Umbral Dagger attacks. The first is a 17 to hit, which does hit. It will deal 6 plus an additional 10 damage for 16 damage to the tough boss. It is then going to go ahead and do its second Umbral Dagger attack. This time it gets a 7 to hit, which does not hit. We'll move back to the boss. Looking to finish the fight here with 2 Warhammer attacks. The first is a 14 to hit, which will not hit. The second is a 6 to hit, which will not hit. We go back to the Vampire. The Vampire, once again, will be doing 2 Umbral Dagger attacks. The first is a 17 to hit, which does hit. It is going to deal 6 plus an additional 6 damage for 12 damage to the tough boss. We go on to the second Umbral Dagger attack. It is going to be able to get a 13 to hit, which does not hit. We go to the tough boss. The tough boss, once again, look to finish the fight with a Warhammer attack. It gets a 16, which does hit. It's going to deal 13 damage to the Vampire, and that is a dead Vampire Familiar. We will end the night by taking an updated look at our bracket. In Winners Round 3, you have the Assassin versus the Warrior Veteran, the Cultist Fanatic versus the Archmage, the Mage versus the Spy, and the Pirate Captain versus the Tough Boss. Next episode, we'll be taking a look at the Losers Bracket, as you have the Pirate versus the Druid, the Bandit versus the Commoner. Then in Loser Round 2, you have Vampire Familiar versus Noble, Cultist versus Winner of Pirate Druid, Guard Captain versus Scout, Priest Acolyte versus Knight, Gladiator versus Warrior Infantry, Berserker versus Winner of Bandit Commoner, Bandit Captain versus Guard, and Priest versus Tough. That'll be all for the action today, folks. Be sure to subscribe and tune back in for episode 4.